An incredible transformation. Discover what happened when an Italian mafia boss saw her alone. The glorious scent of warm pastries wafted through the air, where Maria worked in the family bakery, her hands busy kneading dough. She wore a smile that concealed her turmoil. As the daughter of Italian immigrants, the weight of her family's legacy pressed down on her. With each roll of the dough, she felt the expectations rising like the bread in the oven, expectations that suffocated her dreams of climbing the legal ladder and effecting change through justice. What happened to her ambition? What was it worth now in the shadow of her family's beloved establishment? Behind the counter, a familiar face, Giovanni, a figure from the past, loomed on the periphery of her thoughts. He was the name whispered in fearful tones, a relic of a notorious era now haunted by his mistakes. Tension gripped her. How could she reconcile the history with the present? Maria realized her internal conflict stretched beyond personal aspiration. She was the last link to a heritage mired in the mysteries of betrayal. Suddenly, amidst her kneading, she remembered the dusty leather-bound journal hidden deep inside an old cupboard. Could what was inside shatter the thin, fragile crust of her family's reputation? The potential revelation stirred something deep within her, an urgency that fed her racing mind. What if the history revealed within those pages tarnished the very legacy she felt obliged to uphold? Before we continue, I need to tell you about something important that's happening. YouTube has been making changes to the system and many people are losing notifications from channels they follow. If you're enjoying the content, click the bell and mark all notifications so you don't miss the next videos. And if you can leave a like, it really helps with reach. Seriously, it makes a difference. Oh, tell me in the comments where you're watching from. I'm always curious to know who's on the other side of the screen. Now let's continue. With the email notification having been sent and momentarily forgotten, her thoughts spiraled back to the journal. Inside that book likely lay the truth of Giovanni's connection to her family, some deep betrayal that had ostensibly altered their fates forever. Should she take the first step into unveiling a past she had long been too afraid to confront? What if she discovered that vengeance resided behind those pages? How could she reconcile the desire to reclaim her family's honor with the potential repercussions? The air thickened with tension, her thoughts racing through various scenarios. Giovanni could be a bridge to answers, but did that mean she would forgive him? Each decision seemed like standing on a precipice. One misstep could lead to ruin, yet standing still felt like surrender. Her heart slammed as she envisioned entering the courtroom, her family's name resonating in the air, yet unearthing wounds deeper than she could fathom. Inside her chest, she felt a flicker. Was it anger or a long-buried desire for justice? As flickering lights cast shadows on the dough, she realized the ultimate irony. She had not only inherited her family's fear but their fight. What she sought, justice and truth, could morph into something unrecognizable when presented with Giovanni, and yet she could also help him find his own redemption. She ran her fingers over the cool surface of the counter as conflicting emotions surged within her. Would she confront her family's past, bearing the weight of their legacy, or retreat to kneading dough, trapped in the confines of sweetness and memory? The chilling thought gripped her. Which destiny would she choose as the courtroom doors beckoned, resonating with the echoes of a history she had yet to define for herself? Maria's mind raced as she took a step back from the counter, the warmth of the dough now a stark contrast to the cold reality of her thoughts. She glanced toward the back of the bakery, wondering if the journal was still there, waiting to reveal its secrets. The bakery hummed with life, the soft chatter of customers and the clanging of pans, but for her, it felt like the sound of a fading heartbeat. That heartbeat echoed her indecision about the future that loomed just outside her family's cherished walls. In that moment of quiet chaos, she felt a storm brewing within. She was suffocating under the weight of her family's expectations while yearning for a life that resonated with her personal ambitions. The once cherished tradition of baking, steeped in family history, had become a chain binding her to a legacy she no longer wanted to uphold. She wanted to inject her own flavor into the world, a world that needed reform, that needed justice. Drawing a deep breath, she made a decision. She had to confront the past, for herself, her family, and for Giovanni. The truth contained within the journal could provide clarity or reveal a darkness that had long since been buried. She headed into the back room and began rifling through the clutter to find that familiar leather-bound book. Her heart raced as the dusty cover came into view. Opening it gently, she discovered the delicate pages filled with sprawling handwriting. With each word she read, unease settled deeper within her. Stories of family betrayal, dealings with unsavory characters, and whispered secrets spilled forth, tales that intertwined with the very essence of her being. It was a history she had never asked for yet felt compelled to confront. As the light dimmed slightly, a chill ran down her spine. The ink on the pages often spoke of Giovanni, painting him as a figure marred by betrayal and violence. He wasn't just a ghost from a forgotten past, he was an intrinsic part of her family's narrative. Could she reconcile the man she knew today, the remorseful shadow of his former self, with the villain her ancestors had described? The weight of the journal felt heavy in her hands, yet it also felt liberating. Transformational moments began swirling in her head, challenges awaiting her in the courtroom. This was her chance to not only hold her family accountable for their transgressions but also to redefine her own destiny. Giovanni had erred, but perhaps he could still seek forgiveness. More importantly, she could forge a path toward change. Suddenly, her phone buzzed, breaking her concentration. A message from an old law school classmate appeared, inviting her to a gathering of future legal minds. It was an unexpected reminder of her aspirations, momentarily positioning her ambitions against the backdrop of her family's expectations. Would she go, fueled by the newfound knowledge of her heritage while still tethered to the family business? Or would that gathering become the tipping point, forcing her to choose between loyalty to her family and her pursuit of justice? As she closed the journal, her heart pounded with realization she was standing on the precipice. The time had come to face Giovanni, to unravel the tightly woven threads of their shared history. Straining against the urge to retreat, Maria took a breath, fortified by resolve. What came next would dictate not only her future but also the very essence of her family's legacy. With the journal gripped tightly in her hand, she turned to leave the bakery, determined. Her heart raced as she contemplated a confrontation that could alter the course of everything she had ever known. Would she find redemption for him or herself? As Maria stepped out of the warm embrace of the bakery, the brisk evening air hit her like a splash of cold water. She clutched the journal tighter, feeling its weight a tangible reminder of her family's complex history and her own ambitions. Each step towards Giovanni's small apartment felt like a minor victory against the shackles of expectation. The streets were alive, but she felt disconnected from the laughter and chatter around her, her mind swirling with the potential confrontation ahead. What would she say? How could she confront the man who had caused so much fear and pain but was now trying to seek forgiveness? Her heels clicked against the pavement, a rhythm that echoed her pulsating heartbeat. The sight of Giovanni's building loomed ahead, solid and imposing. She hesitated at the entrance, her mind racing with doubts. Was she ready to face him, to confront the shadows of her family's past while dragging her own dreams into the light? The elevator ride felt excruciatingly slow, the metallic hum barely distracting from her spiraling thoughts. The walls closed in, conjuring images from the journal, treachery and unfulfilled promises, each haunting her in a way that provoked both anger and compassion. She thought about his secrets, about the legacy of violence he was trying to escape, while she stood on the brink of carving out a new legacy. When the door finally opened, Maria took a deep breath, a surge of bravado mingling with anxiety swelling in her chest. She walked down the narrow corridor, each step an act of defiance against the family history that had tried to define her. No longer would she allow her family's past to dictate her future. The knock on the door felt definitive. It signaled the beginning of her confrontation not just with Giovanni but with her own identity. When he opened the door, surprise flickered across his face, quickly replaced by a guarded expression. "Maria," he said, a hint of wariness threading through his tone. "Can we talk?" The firmness of her voice startled even her. He stepped aside, and she entered the dimly lit room filled with remnants of both life and chaos. She took a seat across the table, the distance palpable, but her resolve pushed past the initial discomfort. "I read the journal," she started, feeling the air thicken with unexpressed emotions. "I want to understand everything." Giovanni looked down at his hands, fingers curling tightly around the worn edge of the table as if summoning strength from its solid form. You shouldn't have to know, Giovanni, she interrupted, urgency punctuating her words. Why did you choose this life? How did it come to this? The silence that followed felt suffocating, but Maria pressed on. Each question was a step towards clarity, a way to unravel the tangled fabric of their lives. Giovanni's penance lingered in the air, and in that cramped room, she began to see glimpses of the man behind the legacy. He shared stories that shocked her, moments of weakness juxtaposed with acts of loyalty that left her reeling. It wasn't he the villainous persona portrayed in the journal, there were layers to him, just as there were layers to her. As their conversation unfurled, Maria began to see parallels between them, misguided choices driven by fear and longing for approval. It was not just Giovanni who had been shaped by their family's past, she, too, was a product of the weight of expectations, caught in the lines of loyalty and truth. The clock ticked away the minutes, but Maria felt time stretch, each moment intertwined with revelation. By the time their conversation reached a crescendo of honesty, Maria understood one thing: confronting the past might open new doors, but it also meant accepting the risk of pain. With their dialogue inching toward a fragile resolution, Maria sensed the fragility of hope. Could redemption truly exist in a legacy marred by darkness? The air crackled with the potential energy of her next words, the choices looming before her like specters. Would she leave Giovanni on a path toward redemption, or would she dare to venture down a transformative road herself, challenging their intertwined legacy? A knot of anticipation twisted in her stomach. Whatever path she chose next would alter the course of her life irrevocably, leading her to a truth that was as daunting as it was liberating. The stakes were rising, and she wasn't sure how far she could reach or what she would discover about herself in the process. Giovanni, what if we can change this together? The question hung heavy in the air, poised to provoke a response that could redefine them both. Giovanni's gaze darkened, the words lingering like a cloud of unease between them. The walls of his apartment seemed to shrink, echoing her daring proposition. He opened his mouth, but the weight of his past clung still like a heavy cloak, suffocating the hope shining in her eyes. Change. He finally breathed, skepticism mingling with a hint of yearning. You don't understand what you're asking. Maria straightened in her chair, determination flowing through her. Then help me understand. We can't keep living in the shadows of our past. You've mentioned making amends, this could be your chance. Giovanni let out a bitter laugh, puncturing the hope swelling in the air. Amends? What does that even mean? The past isn't something you can just erase with good intentions and a few kind words. Maybe not, Maria countered softly, her voice steady, but it's a start. You have a choice, Giovanni. You can either continue down the path that led to so much hurt, or what? He snapped, frustration leaking into his tone. Become a symbol of forgiveness? You think that's what everyone wants? I've built this identity on loyalty, on the bonds we forge out of blood, not forgiveness. She saw a flicker of vulnerability, then an ember of something buried deep. And how is that working out for you? Maria said. Is the fear, the anger, worth it? I'm not asking you to forget your past. I'm asking you to choose a path of growth instead of perpetuating this cycle. The grip on the table loosened. Giovanni looked away, his thoughts churning. She could see him warring with himself, battling the remnants of his past against the vision he had yet to embrace. Each moment that passed felt heavy with unspoken possibilities. Maybe he started, almost reflexively. But what power do I really have to change anything? I've done things that can't be undone. Power comes from understanding your choices, she urged, her heart racing. And by recognizing the legacy you want to leave. Are you merely a product of your family's shadow, or can you rise above it? You're not just a reflection of your past, Giovanni, you can define your future. A shudder ran through him, a hint of acknowledgement. For the first time, she could see a crack in the wall he had built around himself. An ember of resolve sparked to life. Did he really want change? Together, he repeated, testing the word on his tongue. What would that even look like? Maria leaned in, a sense of clarity emerging from the depths of her uncertainty. It means facing the consequences of our past. It means publicly acknowledging your wrongs, and showing the world you want to be better, a better man, a better figure for those who've been affected. Publicly? He echoed, the idea igniting a fear deeper than she had anticipated. You think that's possible? It has to be, she insisted, her voice unwavering. If you want a chance at redemption, it must start with honesty, not only with those affected but with yourself. You owe that to everyone. For a moment, the room chilled as Giovanni wrestled with the idea, grappling with the implications of vulnerability. The fight against his ingrained denial began to show traces of wear, revealing a fragile facet of strength he had buried beneath layers of bravado. Maybe I can try, he finally murmured, voice thick with raw emotion. There was an uneasy acceptance in his eyes, an acknowledgement that this was a path cloaked in uncertainty, but a path nonetheless. As a tenuous alliance began to form between them, Maria felt a surge of triumph. The stakes felt impossibly high, their intertwining paths now laden with potential for both destruction and renewal. Could they really forge a future from the ashes of their shared history? But lurking in the back of her mind was a whisper of doubt, the specter of their shared darkness. Would this endeavor lead to true transformation, or would it ignite a deeper conflict, pulling them back into the chaos of their legacies? The challenge ahead was daunting, and as Maria readied herself for the journey, the heaviness of her decision loomed just above her heart. Giovanni. Where do we start? She asked, a mixture of determination and fear threading through her words. His answer, laden with possibility yet fraught with uncertainty, would not only define their future but challenge Maria in ways she never dreamed. The dim light in the apartment flickered as Giovanni pondered Maria's question, exposing the shadows cast by memories he had fought so hard to bury. The simple act of contemplating a new beginning felt monumental, like trying to reshape clay that had long since hardened. Yet, there was a stirring beneath the surface, a flicker of hope battling against the heavy weight of history. First, he said slowly, each word deliberate, I need to understand what I have to face. The consequences of my actions, they extend beyond me. He swallowed hard, the rush of reality hitting him head-on. I've hurt people. Can I really make it right? Maria nodded, leaning closer, tension brewing between them. Yes, and it starts with acknowledgement. You have to confront those you've harmed, not just for their sake, but for yours. This isn't just about them. It's about you reclaiming your identity, refusing to be just another footnote in your family's legacy. Giovanni's heart raced as he imagined the emotional toll this would take, a jury of those he once wronged staring back at him, challenging his motives. Each face would bring back a rush of guilt, anger, remorse. But beneath it all, a burning desire for change persisted. Could he really do this? The notion of standing before those he had wounded felt both terrifying and liberating. Let's start small, he finally proposed, pacing the confined space of the apartment as thoughts collided. There's a local community center. It was a place I used for my own benefit. Maybe I could volunteer. Offer resources where I had once taken away. That's a brilliant start, Maria encouraged, her eyes lighting up. It's about rebuilding trust. It shows you're invested in making things right. You'll learn along the way and grow from the experience. Giovanni paused, a new resolve forming. He didn't want to be the man he had always been. He craved growth, but knew it would be a laborious metamorphosis. What if they don't accept me? What if they turn away? I've known betrayal far too well. You won't know unless you try, Maria responded, her voice steady. This is all part of the journey. Growth is uncomfortable. Each rejection will only make your resolve stronger, and in the end, the people who matter will recognize your effort. She sensed Giovanni's internal struggle. The man she saw was a far cry from the one he projected. She could see a burgeoning essence within him, yearning to redefine itself but still bogged down by fear and hesitation. Their conversation pivoted into something deeper, a shared understanding that both faced their demons, Giovanni with his past, and Maria with her fears about stepping into the unknown as his ally. Yet, as empowered as Giovanni felt at that moment, ghosts swirled around him. His family's dealings were woven into the very fabric of their community, and they wouldn't easily forget the scars left behind. In his heart, a knot twisted. Would he even be strong enough to withstand the repercussions of his past decisions once he stepped out into the light, revealing himself completely? "Let us go together," he finally suggested, a soft determination filling his voice. "You could go with me to the center, to confront what's been done." The initial vulnerability in his tone ignited something powerful in Maria. They would face the fallout of his choices, and perhaps their own fears along the way. For the first time, they were united in purpose, but a nagging darkness loomed. Forces beyond just personal redemption would challenge them, forces that thrived in chaos and uncertainty. Maria couldn't shake the feeling that their path wouldn't just mold Giovanni's future. Shadows from the past would confront them head-on, placing their alliance at risk. Taking a deep breath, she looked straight at him. "Tomorrow then," she affirmed, readiness mingling with apprehension. "But I can feel something brewing. Your past doesn't just vanish. We have to prepare for the battles ahead." Giovanni nodded, steeling himself against an impending storm, a conflicted resolve forming in the pit of his stomach. Would he finally face the force that shaped him, or would he lose himself amidst the tumult? With a steely determination forged in the forge of vulnerability, they ventured towards an inevitable clash with their history, a revealing confrontation that could either pull them apart or ignite an unstoppable force of change. And as Maria departed, the weight of what lay ahead pressed heavily on both their hearts, each step forward stirring the embers of transformation, but igniting a fresh clarity. Change would never come easy, nor would it be without consequence. What awaited them at the community center would prove pivotal, not just for Giovanni, but for the foundation of their newly intertwined paths. Giovanni stood at the threshold of the community center, nerves coiling in his stomach like a tightly wound spring. This place, once a refuge for his vices, now loomed before him as a crucible for transformation. He glanced at Maria, who stood beside him, her reassuring presence a tether to reality amidst his swirling doubts. The weight of their impending confrontation pressed heavy against his chest, a reminder of everything he hoped to change and the ghosts he could not escape. "Are you ready?" she asked, her voice breaking through the fog of apprehension that cloaked his mind. "I think so," he replied, though the tremor in his voice revealed his uncertainty. The very air seemed to hum with unspoken histories, the memories of deceit and betrayal drenching the walls he had once loved as a shield for his failings. As they entered, the colors and sounds of laughter collided against his senses, filling the once familiar space with an energy that both intimidated and excited him. Diverse faces buzzed with activity, children played, and conversations flowed freely. It felt like a world far removed from the one he had known, a world governed by genuine smiles rather than veiled motives. Giovanni's heart raced as they moved deeper into the center, his eyes scanning the crowd. Could he really integrate himself into this vibrant life? He felt trapped between two identities, the man he had been and the man he aspired to be. Each step echoed with doubt, but a voice replied from the depths of him, "You must try, no matter the cost." "Let us find the volunteer coordinator," Maria suggested, scanning the lists of activities posted on the wall. "We need a way in." Her determination was infectious, the soft light of hope radiating from her earnest confidence. An array of activities stretched before them: a workshop for parents, an art class for children, and a computer skills lab. They approached a table manned by a woman in her 40s, hair cascading down like artful waves, her smile an invitation. "Can I help you?" Giovanni hesitated before speaking. "I want to volunteer. I need to give back." The words felt foreign tumbling off his tongue, but they were imbued with sincerity. He was stepping into uncertain territory, a prospect both exhilarating and terrifying. The woman raised an eyebrow, clearly assessing the truth in his claim. "Great. We could use a hand with the youth program. It requires patience and empathy, qualities that I hope you possess." Her scrutiny made Giovanni's knees tremble, yet he stood firm, determined to prove himself. "I'm willing to learn," he replied, driven by an urgency to reforge his identity and mend the fracture of his past. "Then we'll start with a session tomorrow, and you'll see just how much these kids can impact your life," she said before handing him a form, her expression shifting into one of unanticipated trust. Giovanni felt a flicker of optimism in that exchange. Would there be room to transform within this community? As they found a quiet corner afterward, excitement bubbled within him. Yet just as quickly, the dark undertow of his past gripped him. What if I fail? He asked Maria, the fear surfacing again with renewed vigor. What if it all goes wrong and I'm rejected? And what if it doesn't? Maria countered gently. Think of what you could gain instead. Redemption isn't about perfection, it's about growth and facing the truth. Her words resonated deeply, an echo of his earlier resolve. They stirred within him a longing to truly belong, to silence the tragic chapters behind him with meaningful deeds. A shift occurred, he grasped that this was but one step along a formidable journey. Each interaction, each moment of honesty, was a chance to redefine who he was and to reform his legacy amidst the shadows of his actions. The dialogue had changed. He was no longer the passive figure shadowed by his past, but rather an active participant craving accountability. Then the chaos that threatened to surface flared dangerously in his mind. The faces of those he had disappointed haunted him, echoing questions of worthiness and acceptance. What if they descended upon this newfound haven, dragging him back into the darkness he sought to escape? Maria must have sensed the shift, her gaze was piercing, locked onto his. Remember what we talked about. Tomorrow, we confront the past together, whatever it may hold. As uncertainty loomed, an unexpected clarity emerged. Giovanni realized that to truly embrace change, he had to accept vulnerability, confronting the very people he had wronged. The possibility of failure was overshadowed by the prospect of personal awakening. All right, he said, a newfound determination anchoring his resolve. I'll face them. And as they exited the community center, Giovanni was met with a chilling reality. The night air carried an electric charge, filled with anticipation, but he couldn't shake the feeling that deeper trials lurked just beyond the horizon. Tomorrow, the true confrontation awaited, one that could either seal his fate or propel him toward the transformation he desperately sought. What awaited him there, beyond the threshold of uncertainty, would surely define the path ahead. The sun rose over the horizon, casting slashed gold and faded lavender across the sky as Giovanni prepared himself for the day. His internal tumult matched the dawn, a visual symphony of tumultuous emotions unfurling just as shadows receded in the light. Confrontation loomed, and though the dawn heralded a new beginning, it felt more like a countdown to Judgment Day. In front of the mirror, he examined the lines etched into his skin. Each one was a testament to decisions made, disappointments lived, and lessons learned. This morning, he wasn't merely Giovanni, a man mired in shadows, he was an architect of his own future. He had committed to stepping into the light, yet the specters of his past whispered doubts into his mind. Would today be a start of rebirth or a return to familiar despair? He met Maria downstairs, her demeanor radiant and unwavering faith fueling her stride. As they traversed the streets to the center, her presence was a bastion against the storm swirling in his chest. Yet unease filled him as they grew nearer, thoughts of running coursed through his veins. Even after swearing to himself he would confront the repercussions of his choices. Do you have everything ready? Maria asked, breaking into his spiraling thoughts. Giovanni nodded, though the knot in his stomach twisted tighter. I think I do. I've prepared some things to say. He wanted to sound resolute, but his voice didn't possess the strength he intended. Maria smiled, undeterred by his wavering confidence. Remember, honesty and vulnerability are your greatest assets today. This moment could change everything for you. They arrived at the center, and the cheerful sounds of youthful laughter and delighted chatter surrounded them, a stark contrast to the anxiety gripping Giovanni's heart. He stood at the entrance, the threshold he had crossed before the place where past mistakes became chains, binding him to his former self. It was a palpable reminder that redemption was a fragile concept and one he needed desperately to seize. Let us find the kids, Maria encouraged, guiding him through the bustling environment. Giovanni stepped into the activity room, a vibrant space filled with art supplies, laughter, and inspiration. Once feeling like an alien within these walls, he now fought to belong among this chaos of creativity. The realization felt foreign, frail hope skated along the edges of his thoughts, a voice urging him to embrace all it meant to grow. He took a seat among a group of children, their eyes wide with curiosity. Giovanni introduced himself, his voice steadying as the timid "I'm not here to harm you" formed on his lips, replacing the echoes of threats he once carried. Instinctively, however, his mind wandered to the ones he had hurt, those vulnerable lives marred by his decisions. Conversations flowed easily, buoyed by laughter and genuine inquiry. As they posed questions about his past and observed the fragility of his emotional journey, Giovanni felt the fragile barriers isolating him slide away. They volunteered their thoughts and ideas without judgment, their innocence washing over him like rain on a barren field. In that exchange lay a revelation: vulnerability did not need to lead to failure, it could, in fact, be the key to connection. A young girl named Sophia caught his gaze, her shadowed expression mirroring the weight of lost innocence he had worn years ago. "Have you ever done something bad?" she asked innocently. The question penetrated through the noise, a dagger aimed directly at his heart. Giovanni hesitated, a tidal wave of memories crashing over him. "Yes," he said softly, "but I'm trying to do good now. I want to learn from those mistakes." The admission felt heavy on his tongue, yet liberating as it filled the space with honesty. "You'll be okay as long as you keep trying," she offered, her face beaming with kindness. There was a purity in her faith, a simple challenge wrapped in a complex truth that rippled through him. As the session progressed, Giovanni painted. Each stroke of the brush forged connections where shame had long been anchored. Through the colors and shapes, he poured reflections of sadness, hope, and burgeoning resilience, constructing a visual narrative far richer than words, yet the sucking void of unresolved confrontations loomed larger. As the laughter around him swelled, Giovanni could sense the weight of reckoning straining his every breath. It was as if the walls carried a whisper, a fateful reminder that redemption required public confrontation of his past. Maria's gaze anchored him when he glanced towards her, her unwavering support reminding him that this journey was not one to be faced alone. The bell rang, signaling the end of the session, but Giovanni's heart thudded a warning. He could not remain detached from the past. The growing realization dawned: today was just a beginning. There was unfinished business waiting, truths needing to be told. What would he discover about himself as he faced those he had wronged? The moment of accountability awaited just beyond the horizon, one that promised to unravel either promise or despair. The path forward flickered ahead, uncertain yet electric with potential. Giovanni stood at the periphery of the room, the raucous laughter of children fading into a murmur as the weight of unresolved memories settled heavily on his shoulders. While the vibrant colors and joyous clamor sought to uplift him, their infectious energy felt like a distant shore he could not reach. Each smile of the children reminded him of the legacy he had crafted, defined by shadows of intimidation and regret. He took a few deep breaths, blocking the memories threatening to engulf him. Was he ready to confront the aftermath of his past decisions? The thought of facing those whom he had hurt clawed at him. Giovanni knew that true transformation was waiting at the edge of vulnerability, yet doubt gnawed at him. How could he expect forgiveness when he had woven a tapestry of pain? Maria, sensing his inner turmoil, approached with a reassuring smile. "You're doing better than you think," she said softly, her voice an anchor in a swelling sea of anxiety. "Remember what we talked about. Acknowledging your past is the first step toward healing, both for you and for those you've affected." Taking her words to heart, Giovanni recalled Sophia's benign question about wrongdoing. It was as if children could naturally sense the honesty buried beneath the layers of his guarded soul. Those innocent queries urged him towards a painful catharsis he had been avoiding, a reckoning with his choices. That he clasped his hands together, focusing on the warmth that seemed to emanate from Maria. "What if they don't want to hear my truth?" His voice trembled slightly, revealing the fissures that formed beneath his practiced facade. "That's a chance you must take," Maria replied. "The fear you feel is part of this journey, just like the fear they may experience. It's the foundation for any genuine reconciliation." Her words ignited a flicker of resolve within him. He acknowledged the contradiction buried in his heart. He yearned for change, yet hesitated before initiating it. Giovanni felt the trembling roots of his strength pull taut beneath the weight of her encouragement. What if his past didn't have to dictate his future? Stepping out of the warm embrace of the room filled with laughter, he found himself outside, the air brisk and biting. He took a moment to absorb the space around him, gathering his scattered thoughts. They needed to hear the truth, his truth, and he could no longer remain paralyzed by fear. Instinctually, Giovanni reached into his pocket, feeling the smooth edge of the small notebook where he had penned his intentions. Writing had become a different form of painting for him, a way to express the emotions swirling violently in his soul. He unfolded it with purpose, startling himself with how deeply the need for accountability had sunk into his psyche. As he scanned the streets, a figure emerged, a face he recognized and dreaded all at once. Luca, an old acquaintance from his past, approached with a scornful glare. The tight-lipped smile curling on Luca's face sparked something primal within Giovanni: fear, resentment, but most of all, a yearning for resolution. Their history was heavy with unresolved tension. Luca had been one of the lieutenants in Giovanni's darker days, and their encounters rarely concluded without bitterness and animosity. "Giovanni, I didn't expect to see you here," Luca sneered, the weight of unspoken histories lingering between them like fog. "This isn't about the past," Giovanni firmly responded, his heart racing with unfamiliar courage. "It's about growth and redemption." Luca's mocking laugh pierced the air. "Redemption? From you? Do you really think it's that easy?" Doubt bubbled beneath Giovanni's surface, but as he looked into Luca's eyes, he saw a reflection of his former self-aversion still mired in the delirium of power and control. Today marked a turning point. He wouldn't back down. "I'm not looking for forgiveness from you," Giovanni said, voice steadying. "But I owe it to others to confront you and myself." Each word became a step toward liberation, a defiance against the silhouette of his past. Luca remained unmoving, a storm brewing within his demeanor, yet Giovanni embraced the tension. This was the first confrontation, a necessary step. What would the fallout be? Would Luca reveal his own buried darkness, or would Giovanni face condemnation instead? As the air crackled with tension, Giovanni felt the unfurling of his resolve, the journey he stepped onto shrouded in uncertainty yet radiant with the light of possibility. The moment of change loomed ahead, and for the first time in his life, Giovanni was ready to step into its embrace. Giovanni clenched his jaw, feeling the intensity of Luca's presence like a palpable force pressing against him. The streets around them buzzed with life, but in that moment, the world narrowed down to this confrontation, a crucible meant to test his newly found resolve. He could feel the weight of every choice he had made, every breath he had taken, trapped in that single instant. "Growth and redemption," Luca repeated, theatrically rolling his eyes. "You think those words mean anything? What you did can't just be washed away with a couple of nice phrases." There was a bitter edge to his voice, digging deep into Giovanni's vulnerability. Giovanni took a deep breath, anchoring himself as he searched for the right words. This was about more than himself, it was about the people who had been caught in the crossfire of his former life. "I don't expect you to understand. I know the darkness that once defined me. But I'm working on it. I've made mistakes, and I want to be accountable." The truth felt liberating even as it forced him to confront the pain he had caused. "Accountable?" Luca scoffed, stepping closer, the animosity palpable. "You think that's something people like us can just decide? You say you want growth, but what you really want is a way to feel good about yourself." Giovanni's heart raced. Fear of retaliation coursed through him, but this was a necessary moment. The realization hit him: Luca embodied everything he wanted to leave behind. The cravings for power, the need for constant validation, this was the ghost he had to overcome. "Maybe you're right," he admitted. "Maybe it's about feeling good. But it's also about honesty, which I denied for too long." A surge of courage pushed him forward, emboldening his next words. "I owe it to those I've harmed to explain my journey, to share my truth, regardless of how uncomfortable it is. It's time I took that leap. The brief silence that hung between them was laden with tension. Giovanni braced himself for Luca's retort, dissecting every nuance of his antagonist's expression, desperate to predict which way this interaction might tip. Luca's features hardened, the battle of wills palpable. "Let us say you do get this little redemption arc you fantasize about," Luca spat. "What makes you think the others will care? What if they hate you more for trying? You can't just decide to unveil your truth and have them applaud you for it." Giovanni felt a gnawing panic claw at him. Luca was voicing the doubts that had plagued him. But amid that uncertainty, he recognized a flicker of resilience, perhaps even a hint of clarity within the chaos. "If they hate me, they're entitled to," he declared, steadying his voice. "What matters now is that I am standing here, ready to take that responsibility. I'm not offering excuses, I'm asking for the chance to be heard." He observed Luca's reaction carefully, the fluctuating emotions skimming the surface of his hardened exterior. Suddenly, Giovanni was struck by an undeniable truth: Luca was also trapped in the cage of their shared past. While their paths had diverged, the history they held was still intertwined. "Why do you care so much about what I think?" Luca asked, perplexity overtaking hostility. "You've moved on." "Because I haven't," Giovanni admitted, the honesty in his voice surprising even himself. "Moving on isn't as simple as walking away, it's about facing what has been done, being brave enough to confront the consequences. I still bear the scars of our past, and I want to learn from them." For an instant, Luca's eyes flickered with something akin to respect, as though Giovanni had struck a nerve. Then, the mask returned, painting over any hint of vulnerability. "You'll regret this." Whatever remnants of fear remained in Giovanni dissolved with that statement. The fear of confrontation had momentarily subsided, replaced by the warm glow of determination. He would no longer flee from his circumstances, the path forward lay through the fires of honesty. Every ounce of his being vibrated with the urgency to reshape his legacy, not for applause, but as a testament to the undeniable burden of his past. That as they stood on the precipice of understanding, the possibilities of confrontation loomed larger than ever. Would Luca retaliate, or paradoxically, could he become a bridge towards something greater? Giovanni's path hung in the balance, and the stakes had never been clearer. Even if he weren't entirely sure where it would lead, would he emerge from this encounter stronger than before, or would the specter of his past pull him back into shadows from which he fought so hard to escape? He felt the answers teetering on the edge of revelation, demanding to be discovered as he stood poised to face whatever verdict awaited him. Giovanni inhaled deeply, feeling the fresh resolve pool in his chest as he braced himself for what lay ahead. The transformation he sought was not just for himself but as an endeavor to honor the scars he had carelessly left on others. His heart pulsed as he stood face to face with the remnants of his past. Every wrong he had committed whispered at the edges of his consciousness, urging him into silence. Yet, he was determined to break free. Today marks the turning point, he thought, silently affirming his intentions. No longer would he shy away from confronting his past, he would step into the light, laying bare the complicated truth of his journey. "Let us move on," Giovanni said firmly, dispelling the heavy air laden with tension. He suddenly felt a rush of clarity. "I'm not here to seek approval or forgiveness from you, Luca. The truth is, I owe it to myself to be honest, both to the people I've harmed and to the person I'm trying to be." The responses simmered in Giovanni's mind as he contemplated the rhythm of his words. "Growth comes from facing pain, not avoiding it. I need to shed light on my past and the misdeeds I committed. So, what do you expect to gain from this?" Luca scoffed, his skepticism tangible. "You think they'll welcome you with open arms after what you've done?" Giovanni met Luca's gaze, resolving not to buckle under the weight of his doubt. "I have no expectations," he replied, the honesty of his admission crystallizing his sense of purpose. "I'm here to show them I'm trying to make amends. Real changes are born from understanding the scars etched onto each life I touched, however profoundly I hurt them." He could almost feel the ground beneath him shift, a conscious detachment from his past simultaneously grounding him. The fear that had once silenced him paled beside the burgeoning excitement of what was to come. With his heart thrumming, Giovanni turned on his heel and headed toward the community center once more. The sound of laughter and community harmony drew him in like a moth to light, each echo bouncing off the walls, resonating with urgency. He would confront his past, it burned within him, demanding to be acknowledged. "Are you ready for this?" Maria's voice cut through his thoughts, her warm presence beside him. Her unwavering support fortified his resolve, palpable as if affirming their unity in the journey ahead. "Yes. It's time," Giovanni replied, the conviction swirling in his chest igniting his spirit. They entered the heart of the center, and he felt the full tapestry of his humanity wrap around him, fear alternating with hope, despair intertwined with determination. As they approached a gathering of familiar faces, nerves fluttered within him like frantic birds flapping to find freedom. This was it, the culmination of moments spent struggling against shadows from which he had escaped but had never truly faced. "Everyone, can I have your attention?" Giovanni called out, the tremor in his voice barely masking the urgency within. An uneasy silence fell as people turned toward him, eyes widening in surprise and curiosity. The room buzzed with tension, and yet he felt emboldened. "I have something important to share, a confession," he said, his voice rising with sincerity. "I can no longer hide behind the mask of my past. I have made decisions that caused pain and suffering, and for that, I am deeply sorry." Each word resonated with vulnerability, echoing in the hearts of those assembled. The eyes he once feared encountering were now filled with emotions he sought to comprehend: disappointment, curiosity, and incomprehension. "I can't erase what has happened," he continued. "But I am committed to making amends. I want to learn, change, and serve. I owe that to all of you, and to myself." As murmurs swept across the room, Giovanni sensed the doubt hanging thick in the air, but he remained resolute. The journey to reclaim his identity had begun. He was rewriting his narrative, the pages inked with sincerity and responsibility. One voice floated through the air: Lucas, tinged with skepticism. "But can you be trusted? Can you really change, or is this just another act?" Giovanni locked eyes with him. "I can't expect you to believe in me just because I ask. Trust is earned. Today, I am committed to earning that trust, not through empty promises but through actions that demonstrate my willingness to face my past for the sake of my future." The words resonated throughout the room, creating ripples of uncertainty and contemplation among those assembled. Emotions shifted, possibilities unfurling as Giovanni stood firm, a man determined to redefine his legacy. Each gaze now reflected the complexities of human experience, the capacity for growth echoing within their hearts. In this pivotal moment, Giovanni knew he had sparked something greater than himself. They were all part of this intricate tapestry of transformation. He had unleashed not only the pain of his past but the potential for redemption within himself and the fragile threads connecting them all. As the murmurs began to settle, Giovanni felt a weight lift from his shoulders. He had laid bare his scars, embraced vulnerability, and offered a flower of hope in the garden of despair. Beyond just seeking redemption, he began to see the connections that had brought them all here, together. The journey to navigate the murky waters ahead remained uncertain, but he stood grounded in the knowledge of one undeniable truth: transformation was no longer a distant possibility but a living, breathing reality. Now, as the familiar faces surrounded him with a mixture of hope and skepticism, he embodied proof of growth born from the fire of pain. He could feel their eyes soften, the lingering doubts suspended in the air, surfacing possibilities beyond the shadows of history. Giovanni had crossed into a new realm, one filled with promise. It was time to nurture this momentum. Embracing change meant not only confronting the past but forging the connections that defined their interconnected futures. This was just the beginning. Now, think about the stories you've heard today, those moments of vulnerability and transformation. You need to subscribe now to the channel to see more inspiring journeys of overcoming adversity. This is the moment to show your support. Leave a like now to feed the algorithm. Every encouragement bridges others to stories that matter. Comment below with your reactions and theories about Giovanni's journey and the impact of redemption. And don't wait even one more second to share this video with at least 5 friends who need this kind of inspiration. You know that only true fans of personal overcoming stories understand the significance of supporting the channel through your actions.